of all EU institutions and member states alike to protect and promote them within and beyond our borders. I can assure this House that rule of law and fundamental rights are a priority of the Polish presidency. We see the rule of law as a signpost and a pillar of stability and mutual trust in the Union. Our goal is to uphold the rule of law, strengthening the resilience of democracy and promote commitment to EU values. Respect for the fundamental rights and freedoms on which the EU is based is inseparable from a sense of security, which is the Polish presidency leitmotif. I also believe that the Union has the necessary tools and procedures in place to protect its values, and it's crucial that we all, EU institutions and member states alike, apply them constructively and in a spirit of open dialogue with the member states concerned. As regards today's debate, I take note of the recent developments which led this House to hold this debate. The Council remains seized of the matter. Under the ongoing Article 7 Treaty of the European Union procedure, we continue to address the freedom of assembly, the independence of media, the situation of civil society in Hungary, and the many other issues that raise concerns. Let me update you on the ongoing work within the Council in this regard. The rule of law in Hungary will be addressed twice at the General Affairs Council during Polish presidency. On 28 January, Hungary took part in a country-specific discussion at the General Affairs Council in the framework of the Council's rule of law dialogue. The discussion was a significant opportunity to hold a constructive yet frank exchange with Hungary. It showed that the member states stay concerned about media freedom, the functioning of the judiciary, and the Sovereignty Protection Office, and the fight against corruption in Hungary. Another hearing of Hungary is scheduled for the General Affairs Council meeting on 27 May. In preparation to this hearing, the Presidency already had contacts with the EU reporters. The Council as a whole remains committed to this procedure and will continue to play its role in the coming semesters. President, Commissioner, honourable members, before I conclude, let me recall the important contribution of civil society for the promotion and protection of EU values. It is essential in supporting the resilience of our democracies. In this context, I would like to mention that the conference that the Polish presidency is holding in Warsaw on 22–23 April, it will gather a wide range of stakeholders to debate the role of the civil society in defending the rule of law. Its main outcomes will feed into Council conclusion on democratic resilience, which we expect to approve in May. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Minister. And we move to the Commission, Commissioner McGrath.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Minister Schwabke, honourable members. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address you in this chamber today on the recent legislative developments in Hungary and the need to protect fundamental rights and freedoms in the European Union. Just last week, on the 24th and 25th of March, I was in Budapest, my first visit in my capacity as Commissioner for Democracy, Justice, the Rule of Law and Consumer Protection, to engage in dialogue with representatives of the government, judicial authorities, media and civil society stakeholders. It was an opportunity for me to listen discuss and also to gather many important impressions. My exchanges focused primarily on the follow-up to the Commission's 2024 Rule of Law recommendations and also on topical issues such as freedom of assembly, the Sovereignty Protection Office and the implementation of the SERVE programme in Hungary. In my discussion with government authorities, I expressed my concerns over the most recent legislation passed by the Hungarian Parliament on the 18th of March affecting the freedom of assembly. I emphasised that fundamental rights are at the heart of the European project and that the right to gather peacefully is a fundamental right that must be guaranteed. These fundamental rights have been enshrined in the Charter of Fundamental Rights to build a union that protects and promotes human dignity, equality, tolerance and fairness, a union where there is no place for discrimination. A safe and enabling environment for civil society is important for promoting and protecting fundamental rights. In our 2024 Rule of Law report, the Commission found that obstacles affecting civil society organisations persist, and we have called on Hungary to take action to foster a safe and enabling civic space. The Commission has also acted on the new Protection of National Sovereignty Act by bringing the matter before the Court of Justice. The work of the Sovereignty Office creates a chilling effect among civil society organisations and undermines civic space in Hungary. My sense from the visit to Budapest is that civil society organisations continue to face a very difficult working environment. In my dialogue with the national authorities, I made it clear that civil society needs to be protected and deserves our support. Their work benefits the Hungarian people in their daily lives and puts EU funds to work where they are most needed. Another focus of my visit was on media freedom and pluralism. Here we concluded in our 2024 Rule of Law report that the threats to media pluralism highlighted in previous Rule of Law reports have remained unaddressed. These relate to issues such as the fairness and transparency of state advertising, the functional independence of the Media Regulatory Authority, or the governance and editorial independence of public service media. I underlined to the Hungarian authorities how crucial it is that they address the recommendations on media freedom of our 2024 Rule of Law report. Honourable members, let me now turn to the recent Hungarian legislation related to the freedom of assembly. The principles that all our member states voluntarily adhere to are clear. Our union is a union of freedom and equality. Everyone should be able to be who they are, live and love freely. The right to gather peacefully is a fundamental right to be championed across our European Union. It is enshrined in the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the EU and is a core element of our vibrant democracies. The recently adopted amendments to the Hungarian law on the right to assembly prohibit the organisation and participation to an assembly that violates the so-called Child Protection Act of 2021. This prohibition therefore applies to peaceful assemblies that can be qualified as promoting content portraying any deviation from the identity corresponding to one's birth sex, to name just one legal ground. The restriction on the right to peaceful assembly is not the only matter of serious concern raised by the new law. In addition, the law expands the scope of facial recognition technology to all administrative offences, including offences violating the rules on the right to assembly. We are currently conducting a thorough analysis of this new law from the perspective of EU law requirements and are closely monitoring the situation in Hungary. All this is occurring in a context in which hate-motivated harassment against LGBTIQ people is on the rise around the globe. According to the 2024 LGBTIQ survey conducted by the EU Agency for Fundamental Rights, 14% of respondents in Hungary reported being physically or sexually attacked in the 5 years preceding the survey. These attacks particularly impact trans, non-binary and intersex people. Additionally, according to the same survey, 57% of LGBTIQ persons in Hungary experienced harassment in the year preceding the survey. Let me be clear, The Commission stands with the LGBTIQ community in Hungary and in all member states of our Union. As I did in Budapest last week, allow me to recall the importance of upholding fundamental rights, including the right to freedom of expression and to peaceful assembly and association. This applies to all citizens in Europe, and that includes Hungary. This is why we have already acted decisively in relation to the Hungarian so-called Child Protection Act, which is at the basis of the qualification of the demonstrations banned by the newly adopted law. In fact, in 2021, the Commission launched an infringement against Hungary against the Child Protection Act, and the case is now pending in court. As many as 16 member states and the European Parliament intervened in this case in support of the Commission. We are convinced that the Child Protection Act is incompatible with EU law, including the Charter of Fundamental Rights, as well as the EU values enshrined in Article 2 of the Treaty on European Union and common to all our member states. This child protection law stigmatises LGBTIQ-related content and presents it as being detrimental to children's development. We want to be clear. The protection of all children in all their diversity is an absolute priority for the EU and for its member states. However, the Hungarian law contains provisions which are not justified on the basis of promoting this fundamental interest or are disproportionate to achieve the stated objective. The Commission will continue to assess the overall rule of law situation in Hungary in the 2025 Rule of Law report, which is currently being prepared. And let me assure you that the rule of law related developments in Hungary have our full attention, and that includes my personal full attention. The Commission will not hesitate to take further action and, where appropriate, launch infringement procedures to ensure respect of the rule of law and fundamental rights in Hungary. I now look forward to your contributions and thank you for your attention, colleagues.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now, the first round of speakers is on behalf of the political groups, and we start with Mr. Tar for 2.5 minutes on behalf of EPP.
President, Commissioner, it may sound strange, but I bring you good news. Despite 15 years of authoritarian, selfish and hypocritical rule in Hungary, people now have the courage to say that they are fed up, so there is a real chance for change. What shows best that change is near? As you all know, Fidesz has always been brazenly self-confident, but having seen Tisza Party's clear lead in the polls, it is now desperately scrambling and becoming more and more aggressive. The Prime Minister and his cronies are afraid of losing power and losing corruptly amassed wealth. That is why they are taking ever harsher decisions and measures, like the legislative changes of recent weeks, and of which the Commissioner informed us. The State Party is amending the Constitution, and they will expand the emergency powers toolbox of the government. Dear friends, Hungary has been under a state of emergency since 2020, but from now on, the government can even override laws by decree. And their latest bill threatens the mandate of MEPs if Fidesz auditors find even the slightest error in their asset declarations. These are desperate steps that wish to divide society, restrict our fundamental rights, and their aim is to maintain authoritarian power at all costs. Nevertheless, there is a new world awakening in Hungary, colleagues. Our colleague Peter Magyar and we are also traveling all over the country, and from the smallest villages to the largest cities, more and more people muster the courage to stand up. Our referendum initiative has already been completed by nearly 600,000 people. And what I find most encouraging is that more and more people are now talking to each other in smaller and larger communities that we call islands. Despite all the Fidesz hate-mongering and division, these people exchange views and work together to find solutions to local and national problems. people are not afraid. Dear colleagues, sensing the threat, the current Hungarian government is using every means at its disposal to crush people's desire for change. But change is inevitable. Thank you.
On behalf of the S&D group is Mr. Molnar for 2 minutes.
Orbán Viktor hatalma.
Thank you. Viktor Orban is really afraid of losing his power. He has built an illiberal state and he has turned it into an open Putin-type dictatorship. Now he is trying to limit the fundamental rights of the LGBTIQ community in Hungary. Let's say it clearly, banning the Pride, the Budapest Pride, is a homophobic measure, no matter what they say, no matter that they are speaking about protecting children. And this is with the assistance of right-wing parties. These right-wing parties are sitting in 3 different political groups in this parliament. And although they use different arguments, but they are going in the same direction. So we see a coalition of Hungarian right-wing parties. And this is just unacceptable. There are some people from some parties, Fidesz or Mi Hazánk, who are openly doing this, or sitting in the EPP, the party TISA is supporting these measures. They are trying to divert attention. They are speaking about the freedom of assembly without pronouncing the word pride. And not even in Budapest do they address their voters. There is one single party that stands up clearly for the basic rights of everybody, saying that nobody can be deprived of any fundamental rights just because they have a different sexual orientation. And this is the Democratic Coalition, our party, because we take democratic freedoms seriously. We are not playing any political games. We are honest, direct, and clear. And we have already participated at the Budapest Pride every year, and we will be there this year too. So I would like to ask, dear colleagues from everywhere, all over the United European Union, please come to Budapest. Let's participate at the banned Budapest Pride. Let's laugh into the face of the tyranny. Let's meet in June in Budapest and let's show that Europe is not based on hatred but mutual respect.
Thank you. We move to the next speaker, Mr. Deutsch, for 1.5 minutes on behalf of the Patriots.
Today is almost the 1001st Hungary debate here in the European Parliament. While Europe is being overrun with illegal migrants, the competitiveness of European economies is in ruins, and inflation and energy prices are skyrocketing due to the failed sanctions policy, you are wasting your time with another shoddy political theater piece attacking Hungary. It is as frivolous as it is tragic. Instead of your rudeness and lies, let us look at the facts. The Hungarian democracy is fine, thank you very much. The protection of the best interests of the child has been further constitutionally confirmed in Hungary, and that is right. The right of children to healthy physical and mental development must be a priority, and the depiction of sexuality for its own sake is prohibited. The Hungarian solution is exemplary. In Hungary, it is easier to organize protests than anywhere else in Europe. Even now, people are free to express their opinions at demonstrations held in the context of the full exercise of the right of assembly. In a word, even if every week a Hungarian debate is held, even if every month the European Parliament adopts a resolution that denigrates Hungary, even if you stand on your head, we will defend our freedom, we will defend our national sovereignty, we will protect our children, we will reject illegal migration, and we will stand up for peace, because this is the will of the Hungarian people.
We move to the next speaker on behalf of the ECR group for 1.5 minutes, Mr. Ozboda.
I will speak in Polish. Szanowni Państwo,
Ladies and gentlemen, let me start by referring to what the previous speaker has said. I think I can agree with him. Namely, there is inflation raging in Europe and the migration crisis. And here we are talking again about something that is out of context. And this party, this ball on the Titanic is still going on. Whereas, in fact, we've been facing this gigantic crisis. Maybe we should start talking about what's happening in many countries, such as Poland, where a murderer that was convicted to life sentence leaves the prison. And where is he right now? Well, that's the question to the minister. And he's not able to answer this question at the press conference, because it turns out that you can actually leave the prison if you are a murderer. And then the opposition leader that is condemned in France, how is that possible? And Romania, you just invent things. And the only objective of that is to control democracy. So have fun. And during the next elections, the right-wing forces will be even stronger. And the Vice President Vance said that democracy is in danger in Europe. And we should debate about democracy and not about parents having a right to bring up their children as they like to, according to their own views. And Hungary gives this prison and protects children against this ideological march that wants actually to change things and change children. There are just two sexes and no one should undermine that. Even the EPP has been changing their mind. Thank you.
Pour le groupe Renew Europe, pour 1 minute, Madame Fabienne Keller.
Mrs. Keller, please. Minister, Commissioner McGrath, colleagues, the Article 7 procedure on Hungary was triggered in September 2018, 7 years ago. Since then, Viktor Orban has not stopped dismantling the rule of law in his country. There's no free press, there's no judicial independence, civil society is gagged. The latest flagship measure is banning Pride in Budapest. We need a strong and united Europe at the moment. Viktor Orban is undermining any ambitious and united European project. He prefers to support Russia. Commissioner, it's your responsibility to ensure that Article 7 is implemented effectively. We would call on you to suspend Hungary's right to vote in the Council. This procedure has been going on for too long. With my group, Renew Europe, we will stand side by side with Hungarian citizens during Budapest Pride on the 28th of June. I hope to see a lot of you there. Thank you.
So, like always, I have to remind everyone that you are not allowed, of course, to show any kind of signs in these premises. So we move to the next speaker on behalf of the Greens, Madam Strick.
Dear Chair, dear Council, Commissioner, Orban's further crackdown on society follows the next chapter of Putin's playbook. Under the misleading disguise of child protection, he oppresses the LGBTIQ community and even bans the Pride. And behind this icon, he's destroying the right to assembly and freedom of expression for everyone. Citizens are gradually getting outlawed, as Orban can suspend any protective law and even revoke the citizenship of his critics. He has declared a war against NGOs, judges, journalists and political opposition, calling them parasites that need to be eliminated. He's turning Hungary into an authoritarian police state, surveillance technology included. So if not now, then when? I call upon the Commission to step up further actions and the Council to finally actually use the Article 7 procedure to stop Orban now and to prevent him from further blocking and blackmailing the EU. Orban must no longer be allowed to hold the EU and the Hungarian people hostage. Thank you.
Grazie, onorevole. Prego, onorevole.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Alvanito.
Good afternoon, my dear colleagues. Finally, everything can be explained. When you tolerate extreme anti-democratic behaviors in the Union, how can you condemn Mr. Erdogan? or if you have a sensibility as hypocritical. The Orban government becomes more and more autocratic in Hungary. It attacks systematically against human rights and democracy under the tolerance of the European leadership and Mrs. von der Leyen, of course. And now he made a monstrosity, a legal monstrosity. He takes away the citizenship from his political opponents and he creates a legal apartheid. He doesn't recognize the gender and forbids pride. And he creates a state pogrom against the community of LGBTIQ+. He has a war law, and he can have extra laws, urgent laws implemented without democracy, and he marginalizes European citizens in that way, the Hungarian citizens, through the state of emergency. We should activate all the rules of Article 7. We shouldn't give any money. No Hungarian woman, man should be under autocratic state. We meet in June in Budapest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Madam Bovende.
You always, again, wants to shame Hungary, but we don't let you. The freedom of assembly can be limited for the protection of society proportionally. The pride marches that, with the indecent exposure, propagate deviances are such. You were not revolted when the left-wing Hungarian governments cracked down on the freedom of expression brutally, and you would think it's all right that in this debate there will be a MEP who is attacking Hungary, who should respond to attempted aggravated assault at court. This amendment takes issue with one of the most dangerous and strongest lobby globally, which tries to dismantle traditional societies. We want the Hungarian government to be even more determined and efficiently protect families from the attacks of lobby institutions and so the Rainbow Lobby, and should stop proceedings against those who wanted to stop the LGBTIQ propaganda at schools.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vasquez-Lazaro.
Presidenta. Chair, Orban doesn't like freedom, and that's no surprise. That's no surprise. For many years he's been passing laws where he punishes those who disagree with him. Now he wants to destroy the opposition. He wants to crack down on LGBT people. And why does he do that? He says he needs to protect the rights of minorities. Wow, it's unbelievable. If we look at the Russian criminal code, this also cracked down on LGBT relationships. So what he's doing is nothing new. But you think that freedom is a risk. We, however, are in favour of freedom, and you denounce. But there are parties such as Vox, and despite that, freedom will come back to Budapest sooner or later. And why have we had so many debates like this on Hungary? Well, it's because we're fed up of you trying to destroy democracy in your country. If we need to, we will have more debates like this. But there is an alternative. There is an alternative that defends rule of law, democracy and freedoms. And it's Peter Machia who's leading the way. And he filled the streets with Hungarians behind him, and he can do it again in the future.
Thank you very much. Vice President Angel.
Today I choose to speak directly to the dear citizens of proud Hungary. For too long you have been told that Brussels forces you to accept foreign values and that the West seeks to undermine your culture. But let me be clear, our message is not an attack against you. We only ask that every person in Hungary be treated without discrimination and no one be forced to hide who they are. Banning pride and permitting AI surveillance sends a dangerous signal that some among you are less worthy of freedom and respect. The European Union stands for a Hungary where every citizen can live openly with dignity and without fear. Dear Hungarians, the Fidesz government has restricted your right to speak freely and your right to peacefully assembly. It is our duty to stand against this. Hungarians deserve the same right as everyone else in our union. We believe in your strengths and in your rich cultural heritage. Our goal is simple: to protect the rights of all Hungarians, ensuring freedom and equality to every person in this great nation. Thank you very much.
Grazie, onorevole Angel. Prego, onorevole.
Thank you very much. Mr. Borchia is next. Thank you, President. Apologies, but maybe I misunderstood the title of this debate. We're now, I don't know how many debates we've had, tens of debates on Hungary. And it seems that we're having an early election campaign from the Hungarian opposition. Of course, they always need an enemy, and anyone who sees Europe differently from them is seen as a right-wing extremist. You said something right, Commissioner. You said you should be yourself, and I very much agree with that. Why is it not acceptable for the Hungarian people to be themselves and vote for whoever they want to? Once again, this chamber shows that it has a big problem with democracy. Your cordon sanitaire, Soros's money, none of those will be enough because people want to vote according to their heads, and they're not going to bow their heads to what Brussels wants.
Onorevole Insalvini.
Thank you very much, Mr. Insalvini.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Commissioner. Well, as it's often the case in this hemicycle, we're seeing hypocritical statements, ideological statements, those who want to substitute themselves for sovereign states. And that's something we're seeing all too often. Hungarian law just aims to protect children based on our values and Christian history. Above all, they're in line with common sense. They're fighting gender ideology and woke developments. Today, they have proposed a law on surrogacy. We proposed a debate on surrogacy, but as is always the case, this was not allowed. This is no longer acceptable for us. Europe needs to go back to defending its Christian principles and respecting the sovereignty of our member states and our people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Madam Garcia Emira van der Walle.
Grazie, Presidenta, Commissioner and Minister. Colleagues, the Emperor has no clothes. Hungary is one of the poorest countries in the EU, but Viktor Orban chooses to wage yet another culture war. 2/3 of Hungarians describe education system as bad, but Viktor Orban cares more about school books being kind to him. Hospitals are crumbling down because of government corruption, but Viktor Orban thinks undermining our international justice system is more important. Colleagues, the Emperor has no clothes. When he cracks down on the Pride parade in beautiful Budapest, it means he has nothing. He picks on the most vulnerable because he himself is naked. The majority of Hungarians have no issue with the parade. The majority of Hungarians believe in Europe. So no, Viktor Orban does not speak for the people. And we must be at their side and not as his side. Viktor Orban is a weak autocrat who does not belong in our union. And member states, please stop the attack against our European unity, values, opportunities. Activate Article 7 now. Thank you.
Grazie, onorevole. Prego, onorevole.
Thank you very much, Mr. Freund.
Dear colleagues, just last week I was in Budapest with thousands of demonstrators on the Freedom Bridge because another fundamental right is being stolen from Hungarians, the freedom of assembly. Orban has taken freedom from Hungarians time and again, press freedom, academic freedom, the freedom to marry who you love. But whenever Orban is taking freedoms away from Hungarians, he often does that to distract from his stealing. 14 billion euros already, and this time I think he is trying to steal the Hungarian elections next year because the constitutional changes are supposed to allow him to just suspend any law at will. Commissioner, we can't just react to that with the usual concerns and further analysis. We need action. Why are we still sending billions of EU taxpayer money to this dictator? Why are we not freezing all the EU funds until finally democracy, the rule of law, and the fundamental freedoms of Europeans are restored in Hungary? We need action now. Thank you.
Grazie onorevole, prego onorevole Sali.
Thank you very much. Madam Salis.
Grazie.
Thank you. Hungary is a European country which is being held hostage by an authoritarian and corrupt regime. Colleagues, let's look at the most recent developments. How does a repressive government act in the AI age? Well, Viktor Orban is showing us how. Firstly, he banned Pride, labelling the LGBTQI plus community as dangerous for children. Perhaps his friend Putin suggested that wording. And then he threatens to use facial recognition to identify and punish anyone who goes to the streets in spite of the ban. Congratulations. And then when it comes to foreign policy, Orban doesn't disappoint there either. He's expressed solidarity with Marine Le Pen, convicted of having embezzled millions in public funding. And then today he's receiving with great honours in Budapest the war criminal Netanyahu. Instead of arresting him as requested by the International Criminal Court, he's welcomed him with open arms. So we all knew that the rule of law in Hungary had been destroyed. We all knew that, but now this is going far too far. The contempt for the law, civil liberties, we've reached the point of no return. But fascism will be defeated.
Madam Salis, Mr. Gyuri has a blue card for you.
Grazie onorevole.
Okay, thank you. Now, Mr. Urek.
Progresívni kolegovia, prosím vás.
Dear progressive colleagues, I'm asking you, what is your problem? The fact that Hungary wants to set rules on its own territory, on its schools, so what? It's their right to decide this, and I support this fully. And I believe that in Slovakia, one day we will have a government that will openly and officially refuse my migration pact and officially will stipulate by law the prohibition of the pride propaganda among children at our schools, and that we will proudly vote in the Council for peace. So please spare us your speeches about the rule of law. In France, the election was annulled just because they wanted to prevent Madame Le Pen from running, just because you were afraid that she would win. In Romania, you've annulled the entire election because it was not your preferred candidate who won. So please spare us your hypocrisy. All these speeches about the rule of law, this is pure politics. Please start and respect the sovereignty of national states finally.
Start for you from Mr. Sieper. Please, for 30 seconds, Mr. Sieper.
Thank you, colleague. You asked what is the problem, and then you talked a lot. I think I can educate you. The problem is that the human right of assembly is taken away, which is guaranteed by the Charter of European Human Rights, which Hungary is a signatory state of. So, in the light of this problem, would you change your opinion?
Thank you. I will answer in Slovak language just to be understood correctly. Vôbec nemám problém s tým.
I have no problem at all with the fact that Hungary prohibited the Pride march. I think it's their full right to do so, and I support this because the events where people are being sexualized about their sexual orientation, this has nothing to do in the public space, to put it simply.
Prego, onorevole Holmeimer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blaha.
Vážení kolegovia.
Colleagues, Slovaks and Hungarians for centuries, they have very difficult relations. We are not the best friends, yet we get on very well nowadays, and that is thanks to you because of your mad neoliberal politics. What connects us is the fact that we're against war and your crazy liberal values about the fact that we're against illegal migration and that they were against your sexual experiments. Robert Fico in Slovakia, just like Viktor Orban in Hungary, they protect the families, our children, and common sense. In Slovakia, we stick to left-wing conservatism in Hungary. It's right-wing conservatism, but what we have in common is that we're against liberalism. So I'm asking you, how dare you attack the Hungarian democracy in Romania? You've annulled the election in France. You want to imprison the main opposition politician, and you are the ones who want to give lessons to Hungary. It doesn't matter what you do. The Slovaks will support Hungarians, and if liberal extremists want to take away the voting rights from Hungary, Slovakia will block this in the council. Tough luck for you. Long live Hungary. Long live common sense.
Bala, is there a blue card for you? Okay. Please, Mr. Garcia Armida, for 30 seconds.
Thank you, colleague. You said that Viktor Orban and the Hungarian regime, his regime, care about families. That means they care about children. But would you care to explain to me then why it is that 2/3 of Hungarians describe the education system as bad? Purely bad? And would you care to tell me why the population in Hungary is still shrinking, despite all of the efforts from Viktor Orban to encourage people to have more children? And would you care to tell me why young people are leaving the countries by the tens of thousands because they have no opportunities? How is that caring for families?
Prego, onorevole.
Really a funny question, you know. You were talking that in Hungary there is a shrinking population, yes. In Denmark there is a homosexual marriages, there are, yes. And the population is shrinking as well. How it is possible? How it is possible? Lady, I think that Hungary has the right to go its own way. Please respect it. Europe is about diversity, no? And not about the liberal progressive extremism. And you were laughing at everybody who is speaking the different opinion than you. Is it correct? I think that this is a liberal fascism.
Grazie, onorevole.
Thank you very much. Now, Madam Hohlmeier.
Herr Kommissar, Frau Präsidentin, liebe
Commissioner, President, colleagues. Colleagues from the Hungarian and right have spoken about European legislation and European competence and exceeding that. I want to talk about European rules. We have free movement of goods, free movement of capital, freedom to establish oneself where one wishes, freedom of circulation or movement. You can move for a job. You can go where you want to in Europe. And what are you doing? Kleptocratically, you are taking on every sector, grabbing every sector. And who is paying the price? Hungarian employees. They lose their jobs because Hungarian companies are no longer competitive. Second, if we're going to have a true single market, then you have to comply with the rules of the single market. That means you have to be willing to have an independent judiciary. You have to have education where everyone can decide what they study, where, what kind of training they do, etc. There shouldn't be any kind of ideological approach in education. And I wonder when you're going to stop with all of this nonsense, because what you're doing by shutting yourself off in terms of imports and exports means that you have higher inflation, higher prices. And who suffers from these higher prices? The people. And you need to finally comply with the single market, otherwise go to the ECJ.
Is there a blue card for you? Onorevole Hohlmeier, is there a blue card for you, if you accept it, from Mrs. Jovanovic? Please, for 30 seconds, Mrs. Jovanovic.
Ați spus foarte... Can you hear the interpretation? You said that each one of us has the right to do as they please, because that's what democracies are like. Well, Hungary is entitled to do whatever it pleases. Hungarians have the right to do whatever they please, such as Romanians and Hungarians, even though along history they've had their issues. Well, you should know that we currently support Viktor Orban in this issue. And as the those who spoke before me said, we shall do as we please. We want a Christian society where our right to be a couple made of a woman and a man is our right to be.
It's no question. Prego, onorevole, se vuole rispondere.
Es ganz christlich zu antworten.
To answer in a Christian way, Christianity means respecting other people as they are and to show common respect for each other. It's not about establishing rules to force people to go on the defensive where they can't express their opinion, to show who they are and who they want to be. That's what European values of freedom are. And they do not exist, or they're not complied with in Hungary at the moment.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Schmisek.
Independent media, independent judiciary, civil society, immigrants, LGBTIQ community. Who will be next on the list of Orban's regime? Yet, one of the biggest opposition parties in Hungary, TISA, does absolutely nothing about it. I call on Peter Magyar, the leader of TISA. This is your time to stand up. This is your time to speak up. Are you the opposed of Orban's tyranny, or are you his replica, only with a nicer haircut and a fancier suit? Now they are coming for the ones like me, and you are not speaking up. Let's see if there is anyone left to speak up when they come for you. The Pride March will keep marching, no matter Orban's will to repress us. On the 28th of June, SND will be there in Budapest. Hungarian Demokratikus Koalició will be there as well. Hungarian LGBTI community. Today we stand with you. Today we fight for you, and we will never give up.
Is there a blue card for you? Okay, no. Prego, onorevole Knotek.
Mr. Knotek.
Dear colleagues, I have the feeling that this is another unnecessary debate. I believe that the elected representation has the right to update legislation in place. And of course, every piece of legislation can be challenged at Constitutional Court. Concerning this case, some of you blame Hungarian policymakers for targeting minorities. In my understanding, the aim of discussed amendment is to protect people, especially young population, from excessive public behavior regardless of sexual orientation. And we shall not forget that the rights of minorities is granted by Hungarian constitution. So the real question behind is the compliance of this amendment with Hungarian constitution. And I honestly hope that the European Parliament has no ambition to just compliance of any national policies with respective national constitutions. This is the role of judges, not of policymakers. Thank you.
Grazie, onorevole. Prego, onorevole.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kerner.
Liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, schauen.
Colleagues, well, let's look at the arguments that we've heard. Firstly, Hungary has a right to decide its own. Well, yes, it can. But pursuant to Article 2 of the EU treaties, it states that sexual orientation is protected as a fundamental right. So it can't decide alone on that. These are rights that European citizens have, and no one forced Hungary to sign up to the treaties. That's in the treaties, so you have to stick to it. Then secondly, why are they attacking minorities? They should be dealing with the economy and migration rather than trampling minorities. And then we've heard we have to ban this Pride March because children are going to be changed somehow. All this propaganda. Well, it doesn't work like that. You don't become gay because you see a Pride March. I mean, that's absolute nonsense. If you have this kind of crazy idea in your head, well, how certain are you of your own sexuality? Oh, yes, it was the former boss of Fidesz who, during the pandemic, was caught at an illegal orgy. Perhaps that's the reason. That's perhaps why you get so excited about this kind of thing. I mean, we've had enough of this nonsense, really.
Onorevole Van Sparen.
Thank you very much. Now, Madam Van Sparentek, all of you, please stick to your allotted times.
Commissioner, Minister, colleagues. When I heard Orban banned Pride, I realized it is not going well for him in the polls, because this is the boring old playbook of wannabe autocrats. And I'm furious that, again, he's using us, spreading lies and hate about the LGBTQI community and validating the hate crimes which always peak after these legislative changes. He's making our lives miserable, all as a disguise to keep his power. Because we know it is not his ultimate goal to get rid of the rainbow flag. His goal is to get rid of democracy. Banning Pride is just his next step to silence even more voices. We know he changed the law to get rid of the freedom of assembly. But you can't ban Pride. Pride is a protest for equal rights. And on the 28th of June, I will stand side by side with my queer siblings in Budapest. And I hope to see many of you there. Thank you.
Grazie onorevole. Prego onorevole Fröhlich.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Fröhlich.
Frau Präsidentin, in Deutschland wird
President in Germany, they're talking about banning the AfD. In Romania, there's an undermining of democracy. We see what's happening in Poland. There is a political death sentence on Marine Le Pen. You don't care about any of that, though. You just focus obsessively on Hungary because Orban wants to protect children from this virus and ban Pride. And that's right. Because if you look at Pride, what they're doing at Pride should be maybe allowed in a bedroom, but not on the street. And you are using this slogan of sexual freedom, but there's people having sex, copulating in front of children at Pride. So what's happening there is child abuse. There are children who do nothing. They are the bad children. If you protect your children, then you're a good parent. Instead of attacking Orban, follow his example. In order to protect our children, follow him, and let's say no against the sexualization of all areas of life and our children.
Grazie onorevole. Prego onorevole Sieper.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Sieper.
Dear people of Europe, a few years ago I watched the Cologne Pride and I saw a man dancing on a wagon wearing a strap-on dildo. And right next to him, 2 children on the sidewalk. And I thought to myself, maybe sex toys do not belong in a public parade. That would have been a proportionate response, one that respects the rights of the performer and the dignity of the children, one that the Hungarian constitution demands. But banning Pride altogether, that's not about child protection. That's about hate and populist politics. And for that, President Orban is willing to sell off the rights and the dignity of a part of its own people, forgetting that he as president is meant to serve all the people. And that we will not let slide. We will be in Budapest. We will take their batons, we will take their tear gas, and we will take their cameras. Because we will not back down. In the end, we are all the people. Thank you.
Grazie onorevole. Prego onorevole.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Vavrikievich, please.
President, Commissioner, Minister, the spring has arrived on the Danube River, not only in this calendar sense, but in the symbolic narrative. Freedom has blossomed in the hearts and minds of the people. Yes, the Hungarian spring of the people has arrived. After 15 years, the people have finally had enough. They have had enough of the arrogant regime, the methods of rule taken from the autocratic, brutal autocracy, and the sowing of hatred and fear, the drastic violation of the rule of law, the lying and the manipulative propaganda, the kleptocracy and the corruption, and finally, the turning Hungary away from the Western civilization, from Western Europe, from its roots and the desires, and changing vectors toward a cruel, totalitarian tyrant from the East. The people have had enough. Hungary has been in Europe for more than 1,000 years, and the Hungarian people will not allow anyone to turn away from Europe, from its values, from the democratic principles of the state, from the style and prosperity of life, and from the alliances of the Western world, to which Hungary indisputably belongs. The Orban regime feels it, sees it, experiences it, the mood on the street, and it's starting to get scared, because the time will come to bear responsibility for all of that happened over the 15 years. And all of these recent legislative actions that break the rule of democratic world are a sign of fear and panic. Thank you.
Is there a blue card for you, if you accept, from Mr. Schaller? Prego, onorevole.
I would like to address you in Hungary, if you may. So, képviselőtársam.
Colleague, you have been to Hungary several times. Colleague, you visited Hungary several times. Maybe last time it was a TISA party's event. I would remind you that in Poland, the constitutional court's decisions are disregarded. Your party members had taken over the public television. Members of parliament arrested on the open street. According to the declaration, you've received funding from the leftist NGOs, which actively interfere in Hungarian politics. This is the reason why you attacked the constitutional rights of Hungarian parents and children. That is, want to oppose Hungarians and want to enforce the gender ideology. We protect our children.
Easily and clearly, I have went through all of these lies and manipulation in Poland between 2015 and 2023. But I'm a lawyer. I'm stick to the facts and the court verdicts, and you should be also as well. So look at the verdicts of the Court of Justice, of the European Court of Human Rights. You lost all of the cases, all of the cases. That's my answer.
Grazie, onorevole. Prego, onorevole Riedel.
Thank you. Mrs. Riedel now, please.
Hier, Viktor Orban accueillit à
Yesterday, Orban welcomed Netanyahu despite the orders from the Court of Justice. And yesterday we saw that Madame Le Pen was condemned for having embezzled money from this parliament. And now Orban is banning Pride in Budapest. This is a clear violation of the right to assemble, to demonstrate, and a violation of the rights of people who are discriminated against just for who they are. You are the ones who want to have freedom and freedom of expression, but how weak, how cowardly. You're panicking here. Orban has peace with Putin, but is declaring war on knowledge and freedom in Europe. This parliament should condemn everything done by these autocrats to undermine the rights of those that have been achieved by the European people who fought since the French Revolution for freedom and progress. This is a medieval ideology, Mr. Orban, and you do not have the right to violate the rights of trans and gay people in the name of freedom. Thank you.
Mr. Leggeri, please. Thank you, President. Well, let's look at what's happening in Hungary, but also in France. For years, Viktor Orban has been accused of undermining the rule of law, gagging the opposition and controlling the media. Brussels gets annoyed and threatens sanctions. But the real gagging is taking place in France, and there's total silence on that. Today, Marine Le Pen, the candidate of millions of French people, can no longer stand in an elections, and that is unacceptable because there's no reoffending possible. This is a democratic scandal. What would you say if Viktor Orban's main opponent was prevented from standing in an election? We're seeing an authoritarian drift in France, and it's unprecedented. We've seen the brutal closing of C8, a popular TV station, and now we're seeing the opposition neutralised. But where are those people who criticised Orban yesterday? They criticised the dictatorships yesterday, but today they're closing their eyes. Poland, Romania, Germany, the United States, everywhere we're seeing efforts to stop the people having their say. And now in France, they're trying to neutralise Marine Le Pen via the judiciary. Our opponents know they can't beat us at the ballot box, so they're trying to deal with us differently. But we won't let them act. It's time for people to open their eyes, mobilise and defend the rule of law, respect for the people and democracy. Thank you very much, President.
Grazie, onorevole. Prego, onorevole Fries.
Thank you. Mrs. Fries now, please.
The right to be who you are, to live without fear of state repression, to peaceful assembly. These are all rights that lies at the very heart of what it means to be European. So when one member state tramples on these rights, it's our collective responsibility to act. Viktor Orban does not speak for all Hungarians. We stand with the brave officials, the organizers, the citizens fighting for Budapest Pride. To all those standing up for freedom, equality, and the right to live authentically, we stand with you and we thank you. Today it's Hungary, but tomorrow it could be anywhere. So we must be unwavering in our message. Love is not a crime, equality is not negotiable, and Europe will not look away while its values are being dismantled. So today, as guardians of the treaty, I want to ask the Commission, what can we do, when can we do something to finally protect the fundamental rights that defines our union?
Grazie, onorevole. Prego, onorevole Camara.
Thank you. Mrs. Camara now.
Mes chers collègues,
Dear colleagues, this is a serious moment as I speak to you to defend European values, equality between all human beings. Once again, the far right and Orban are attacking this value, banning the Pride Parade in June. This is an attack on the whole LGBT community and all those who are harassed and discriminated against. This is an attack on love through hate and rejection. Once again, this is an attack on all minorities whose lives are threatened. The far right is synonymous of hate, rejecting racism, homophobia, transphobia, misogyny, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia. We must stand up, we must become indignant, and we must fight for our rights, for our freedoms, and for the equality of all. Our love is stronger than your hate. This is a tough battle, but it is a necessary one. So I will be there in June at the Pride Parade, standing side by side with those who have to fight for their dignity day in, day out.
Blue card for you from Mrs. Odzboka, ECR. Prego, onorevole. Mister, sorry.
No problem, I will speak in Polish. Z tej pani wystąpienia...
Well...
Z pani wystąpienia...
Well, from what you've said, I gather that it's not extreme if it's different than what you think. Because from the Polish perspective, well, we are a country with communism. It seems you are closer to the previous system than to the current one, to the democratic system. So please better think before you say something. But right now you are being intolerant, like the whole of the left that you are representing.
Prego, onorevole, per la risposta.
Please, for your response.
Sorry, but I thought it was supposed to be a question you were asking. I didn't hear any question there.
Prego, onorevole Lopatka.
Mr. Lopatka.
Okay. Yeah. Dear colleagues, Je suis Marine, said Prime Minister Orban 2 days ago. What did he mean? The misuse of 2.9 million euros? Is this what he shares with Marie Le Pen? But it's not this statement on X that is concerning. The recent legislative changes in Hungary should be a wake-up call for all Democrats in Europe. They undermine fundamental rights, weaken democratic institutions, and erode the rule of law, all of which are core values of the European Union. And as members of this Parliament, I think it's our duty to speak out and act when these principles are at risk. Austria has always had in its history a special relationship with Hungary. The Hungarian colleagues know it. And we always supported a constructive dialogue. But media restrictions, judicial interference, and the erosion of civil society are unacceptable. As the EU member states have to be on the right side, also Hungary must uphold its commitments under EU law. The rule of law, conditionality mechanism must be enforced. EU funds cannot support governments that undermine democracy. If Orban, and it's Orban, continues on this path, there must be consequences.
Is there a blue card for you? Onorevole Lopatka, if you want, is there a blue card for you? Okay, from Mrs. Freud. Mr. Freud, sorry.
Mr. Lopatka, you just spoke that probably Orban feels the shared corruption and stealing with Marine Le Pen. Are you aware that actually, if you look into how much Orban has stolen, he actually manages to steal almost every day the amount, the 4.6 million that took Marine Le Pen, I think, 12 years to amass. So the problem is slightly larger. The other question I have on the Fidesz people have spoken about the inflation. Are you aware, actually, that the Hungarian inflation is almost 3 times as high as the Eurozone, which stands at 2.2?
Prego, onorevole.
Möchte ich Deutsch antworten?
Let me answer you in German. Well, the point here is that Orban is leading Hungary into isolation. That's the real theft he's committing.
Onorevole, prego, onorevole Insigne.
Thank you. Mrs. Inchia now, please.
I am an unwavering ally of the LGBTIQ community. LGBTIQ rights are human rights, but what I am not is I'm not an ally to those who cling to regressive ideologies such as Viktor Orban and his ilks, who embody a medieval mentality that seeks to fight progress. Those of you in here that support him, you should be ashamed. The recent legislation aimed at banning Budapest Pride and all public LGBTQI events is nothing less than an assault on fundamental human rights. It is a deliberate act to silence voices that demand dignity and respect, and to install a culture of fear in the heart of those who dare to love and be themselves. The right to love, to express oneself, and to assemble freely are not mere privileges granted by the state. They are non-negotiable freedoms etched into every fabric of our humanity. There is no difference between Orban and the Taliban leaders in Afghanistan and the mullahs in Iran.
Grazie, onorevole. Prego, onorevole Bouchardé.
Thank you, Mr. Bouchardé now.
Presidente.
Thank you, President. You have to see a psychiatrist here, I think, so that you can get rid of your Hungary phobia. I mean, another debate on Hungary, but once again, you're trying to hide reality. And the reality is that a homosexual should be more afraid and is at more risk of being attacked in any street of Barcelona, Brussels, or places in Germany rather than Budapest. There are places in Berlin, for example, where people who are openly gay or wear a kippah are warned by the police that they have to take precaution. And these are where there are Syrian, Turkish, other communities. There is a place where these communities are being investigated and have been for a while for abusing a 12-year-old girl, but you don't say a word on that. There are countries where homosexuality is punished with the death penalty, like Mauritania. In Europe, there are codes that want to see women completely submissive to men, and these things are coming to Europe as a result of what you do. You should be talking about that. Thank you, Mr. Nordvik.
It's actually easy to feel embarrassed when you listen to the far right today. All your hate and your lies is embarrassment to this House. I'm sorry, we're standing here today discussing fundamental right in EU. It's in the treaty. We are all here because we want to be here. All the countries part of EU is here because they want to be here. And your answer is lies and is hate. I want to say to all the gays, lesbians, bisexuals, trans people, intersex people of Hungary, we stand with you. We stand with you today. We did yesterday. We do again tomorrow. And we do, of course, the 28th of June. We will not step down because of hates and lies from the far right. And we will not stand down just because of Orban's bigotry. It's time now to act. And it's also time for the Commission and the Council to act. We have had enough talk. We need action. And you know what to do.
Grazie onorevole. Prego onorevole.
Thank you. Mrs. Doherty now.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, today in Hungary, loving just somebody that you love can get you branded a threat to your the state. And that certainly isn't about protecting values. It's state-sponsored homophobia. The bill that was introduced to ban the Pride marches, to use facial recognition technology and to fine anybody €500 who dares to attend, it isn't just repressive, it's absolutely shameful. In Ireland, we know what it means to fight for LGBT+ rights. We know that dignity, visibility and equality are not just given, they're won by people who are brave enough to demand them, people who refuse to hide even when it was hard, and especially when it was dangerous. And the LGBT+ community of Hungary, who have marched, spoken out and stood tall, simply want to be who they are. They certainly will not be silenced or repressed. In Europe, we have values: freedom, dignity, equality. Orban, however, only values power. If we as Europeans stay silent now, we risk normalising this erosion of rights across our union, and we open the doors for others to follow. And there are many waiting in the wings. This is not just Hungary's problem, it's a test of Europe's conscience. Real leadership means courage. It means standing up for your people. And that means all of your people, even the ones that you mightn't agree with. It's not about targeting our most vulnerable. There's nothing brave about bigotry. And it's time for Europe to invoke the rule of law. And I wish you every success, Commissioner McGrath.
Grazie onorevole. Prego onorevole Nemec.
Thank you, Mr. Nemec.
Dear European members in the European Parliament, we're holding discussions on Hungary and its destructive anti-European actions one after another. Orban and his warriors are behaving as autocrats and are continuously violating European values, international law, and the rights of their own nation. I condemn the ban that they have adopted in Hungary. This is a controversial law. The Hungarian LGBTQI community has been under attack for many years. This law now adds further fuel to the fire of hatred and poses a direct threat to the community and the civil society organizations. Dear colleagues, how long are we going to just talk about Hungarian government and Orban without any concrete sanctions? Let us not forget, even if he feels at home among foreign autocrats, Viktor Orban remains a black sheep in the EU for a reason. That is why I appeal to the rest of the Union's leaders to immediately freeze European funds paid to Hungary and to take away its voting rights in the Council. And to our neighbours in Hungary, I say that we stand with you and we will stand with you in the streets of Budapest in the Pride Parade.
Onorevole Laszlo.
Thank you. Mr. Laszlo, please.
Hungary has been at the forefront in fighting back against woke initiatives, including gender ideology. Non-discrimination, including based on sexual orientation, is, of course, guaranteed by Hungarian law. In Hungary, we put parents and children first. We banned all sexual propaganda from schools and restricted accidental exposure of minors to sexually explicit content. Naturally, this should apply to public events too. We stand with the rights of parents to decide what is best for the physical, moral, and intellectual development of their children. In response, we were sued by the European Commission and 16 member states. Several of our critics allow in their countries medical interference in the sexual development of minors. In your countries, if you want to tell your children that sex change is real, or that they should invent their own gender, we will not agree. But we will not try to interfere in your countries. You shouldn't in ours. Thank you very much.
Is there a blue card for you, if you accept, from Mr. Kulia? Prego, onorevole.
Dear colleague, you talk about protecting children, whereas according to the data of the Ministry of the Interior, 300 babies are in hospital who cannot be placed, do not have place in the institutions. These kids are 2 or 3 months old. They cannot even cry because no one is taking care of them. And you're talking about children of protection who nominated their head of state, who gave freedom to pedophile criminals. And I don't mention the priest, Mr. Beshe, who was parading on gay porn videos, whereas he was a personal friend of Mr. Orbán.
I apologize, but children need true protection and politicians who really stand up for their rights. And this is what we have been doing for 15 years, as opposed to you, who visit children's homes, give presents, and then, as you are not able to comply with rules, you take your presents and take them away and go back home. So please think again about what you're doing. And once we're talking about child protection, I do hope that after this, you will also say that you are supporting banning gender ideology and sexual content from kindergartens and schools. Thank you.
Onorevole, prego, onorevole.
Thank you. Mrs. Estaras Ferragut now, please.
Gracias, Presidenta.
President, Commissioner, I want to say that we and my group are firmly committed to children's rights, but we're also unwavering in our support of LGBTQI+ rights in all member states. We need to protect children, but diversity is enriching. We have a union of freedoms, equality, and non-discrimination. Discriminating is not an option. Discrimination should be impossible because non-discrimination is a right. Everyone should be who they are. Everyone should be able to love who they love. Attacks on the rainbow community continue to rise in number, and what is being done in Hungary is a restriction on human rights and on the liberty or freedom of expression, and it foments hate speech. They are attacking something that they think, they're attacking a community that they think is harmful, but that's not the case. And what we're also seeing is a lack of access to information among young people in Hungary. There is further stigmatization of LGBTQI+ people, and that further endangers them. They already live in an environment which is difficult for them. There are also this also means that there are more stereotypes against these people. This is all against human dignity. There isn't a real reason for this. This isn't really going to protect children. Instead, we should be a beacon for diversity, inclusion, and other rights. Thank you.
Prego, onorevole David.
Mrs. David now, please.
Big Brother is watching you. No, this is not Orwell. This is not 1985. This is Hungary in 2025. It's a regime which, on the excuse of child protection, is building a digital surveillance state. Under the new law, an inoffensive-looking street camera records our faces, authorities identify us with AI, and then the fines will be collected as taxes a few days later. We are protecting Hungarian interests as opposed to the government, which is not protecting the children, it is protecting its own power. We are criticizing the measures of the Hungarian government, and we are justified in doing so. So I was expecting that Fidesz would attack us, but the old opposition is attacking us. So the Democratic Coalition does not want a change of regime. After all, But Hungarians do want a change of regime. When criticizing the government, we feel that Hungarians are supporting us. We have an initiative, a national initiative, to a questionnaire, a sort of referendum, and 600,000 people have answered. 10,000 volunteers are visiting all communities in the country. We're working together for a Hungary that is peaceful, a European, and is not a digital dictatorship. Thank you.
Onorevole, is there a blue card?
Thank you very much.
From Mrs. Vixak. Prego, onorevole, per 30 secondi.
Go ahead, 30 seconds.
Köszönöm szépen.
Thank you. A regulation on Hungarian protection includes that gender activists cannot enter schools. What is your personal position in this? Should gender activists enter schools or not?
Ha a gyermekvédelemről kérdez, akkor...
So if you're talking about child protection, I can tell you my opinion about the Hungarian government's measures. We know that a year ago, impunity was granted to a person who helped a pedophile, and nobody has apologized for that. Nobody has taken responsibility. Child protection system is in ruins. Every fifth child is excluded and is living in poverty. There's a demographic disaster. It never before have so few children so few children born in Hungary, and this is all that the Hungarian government has achieved in 15 years. They are protecting their own power, not the children.
Grazie, onorevole.
Thank you very much. That brings us an end to the debate. There are 4 requests under Catch the Eye, and we'll accept them. We'll start with Mrs. Walsh.
Thank you very much. Commissioner, I was delighted in your statement you said you're going to pay personal attention because as I sit here in this chamber again for the second mandate, I'm listening to these speeches and I cannot help but feel grossly concerned about the direction of travel. Hungary's recently passed legislation is yet another attack on the LGBTI+ community, but this action expands beyond Hungary. It's about a message this sends to every gay or queer kid in Europe, wondering if we are moving forward on their behalf or slipping backwards. And we cannot turn a blind eye yet again to the blatant attack on the rights of our community in Hungary or elsewhere. We need to take urgent action, and that is done through conditionality. And we need to find teeth now more than ever to actually pin these people to a collar, because ultimately we're turning into the United States of America right now. Equality is non-negotiable, and the visibility of any community should not be a crime. EU fundamental rights is not a la carte, as much as some might believe. And we need to find teeth now, Commissioner, more than ever. Thank you.
Grazie, onorevole. Prego, onorevole.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lopez Aguilar.
Commissioner McGrath, sí, ya sabemos que son incontables.
Yes. We know we've had a lot of debate in this Parliament, and there have been a lot of statements against Mr. Orban. 15 years he's been in power with this despotic, corrupt rule, and he violates rights in Europe, all the rights on the fundamental charter in Europe. We could talk about the laws about the schools, about the prevention of demonstrations, LGBTI, the fact that he supports Putin and wants to create a union to violate the rules of immunity. But Hungary is part of the International Criminal Court and should be supporting its rulings. Mr. McGrath, we need an infringement procedure, but he doesn't even listen to the rulings of the European Court of Justice. The only thing we can do is finally implement Article 7 and all the consequences that go along with that. So please, I would ask the Council to exclude Hungary, take a decision and without having Hungary in its voting. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Domotor.
The European Parliament has good reasons to be worried about democracy, but not for the reasons you quoted. In France, the Court of Justice stopped the nominee for president to run the elections. In Romania, the first round of the presidential elections were won by a person who is not wanted by the elites here and there. What you do, you cancel the results. Meanwhile, the ex-commissioner, and you're working on a censorship. And now, today, an Italian communist is trying to teach us on democracy, who is beating up Hungarians in the open streets, a real professor in human rights. These are not debated here because it's not allowed. But there are debates on Hungary. I think it's the 67th time. No matter what, for the 68th time, we tell you that this bill is about the protection of children. We won't yield this, neither in terms of peace and in terms of migration, in the no matter which is relevant for the member state and is reflecting the will of the people of Hungarians.
Thank you, Chair. Dear colleagues, I think today we are not debating on elections in France or Romania, but the most important, what I would like to emphasize, that the latest criminalization of pride marches, together with authorization to use face recognition in order to persecute peaceful protesters in Hungary, is not only a simple breach of freedoms of assembly and expression. With this type of legislation, Hungary has put itself at the distance of only one step short to Russia, where LGBT community has been proclaimed as an extremist organization. Needless to say that in such a manner, Hungary seriously and persistently breaches the EU fundamental values, such as human dignity, freedom, democracy, the rule of law. Being an agent of Putin's regime, Orban has nothing to do in the European Union. Therefore, let us be honest. The further delay in applying Article 7 for Hungary can lead only to self-destruction of the European Union itself. Thank you.
Grazie onorevole. Onorevole Sieper, un po'.
Thank you very much, Mr. Siepel. A point of order. If you give us the article, please.
Mr. President, I'm basing my point of order on Rule 10, number 1 and number 4, on the colleague who just said that the elites here in this House do not want a certain policy or a certain candidate. I think this is a blatant disrespect for the fact that we are all democratically elected officials, elected by the people of Europe. We are not elites, we are people from all political and societal backgrounds, and we have heard stuff like this for the whole week. I cannot take it anymore, and I ask you, Mr. President, to stop at least such insultive behavior against our parliament and the very institution itself. Thank you.
Grazie onorevole. Prego.
Thank you very much, Commissioner McGrath, for the conclusions.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I'd like to thank all of the honourable members for their contributions to this debate. Democracy, equality, rule of law, freedom, human dignity and respect for human rights are indeed core values of the European Union, agreed by all EU member states and enshrined in the Treaty on the European Union and in our Charter of Fundamental Rights. And these values must be respected every day in our work. I can confirm that, as announced in the 2025 Commission Work Programme, the Commission will present a renewed LGBTIQ equality strategy post-2025 by the end of this year. It will build on the progress achieved by the 2020 to 2025 strategy. It will focus on addressing the continued and persisting hate-motivated harassment and violence targeting LGBTIQ persons, including online, and banning conversion practices. Turning to the Article 7 procedure, the Commission continues to share many of the concerns expressed by the European Parliament in its reasoned proposal triggering the Article 7.1 TEU procedure for Hungary back in 2018. The procedure covers a wide range of rule of law issues. The Council has held 7 formal hearings on Hungary, most recently on the 25th of June last year, and the next hearing in the Council is scheduled for next month, and I look forward to participating in that discussion. The Commission will continue to closely monitor the situation of LGBTIQ people across our Union and will always stand ready to participate in the procedure in the Council and is of the view that the procedure should be maintained for as long as the underlying issues remain unresolved. But, honourable members, let me be clear that the imperative of child protection and the right to gather peacefully are not in conflict. Nobody should have anything to fear from the right of freedom of association. And I want to conclude by assuring you that the Commission will not hesitate to take further action to ensure respect for the rule of law and fundamental rights in Hungary and indeed in any other member state, because these are obligations that are core to membership of the European Union and have been signed up to explicitly by every member of the European Union, and we will act to uphold them every day in our work. Thank you very much.
Grazie, Commissario.
Thank you, Commissioner. The debate is now closed. The next point on the agenda are the Council and Commission statements on the importance of trans-European transport infrastructure in times of stalling economic growth and major threats to Europe's security.
Prego, Commissario Tsitsi.
Commissioner Tzitzikostas, on behalf of the Commission, go ahead.
Grazie mille, Presidenta. Honourable members, it's an immense pleasure for me to be here today with you to talk about what I consider to be the centrepiece of EU transport policy, the Trans-European Transport Network.